Hello and welcome. I want to talk in this video about the issue of male sexuality, how it's seen in society today, and also the limitations imposed upon it. Also the long-term damage that these restrictions and stereotypes have on men and boys. Our society today, it loves to view male sexuality as simple and not complex. And yeah, it's an uncomplicated way of looking at things. And true, it's a very marketable concept. But it's also very detrimental. I mean, male sexuality has, in the last few decades, been essentially degraded. And the attacks on it have been brutal. We've been indoctrinated with these messages to the point where we've all internalized them, both men and women. And I look around and there's no place in society where men can talk about sex openly. And the man that does will be judged, and he will be judged harshly. Because males aren't expected to have needs beyond their dick, and men that do are seen as less masculine. They'll find themselves facing shaming tactics, and they'll find themselves shamed into silence. There's a role for men, and it's a nice little box full of cliches and stereotypes. And men are utilities, and they better damn well not forget that. That's the message. I know that when men talk with each other about the sex that they have with women, their conversations are very restrictive, they're very condensed. They censor themselves when they talk about sex, or they just go ahead and degrade themselves. Or they self-deprecate, especially in the presence of a female, and you've seen this. Because men know better than to go against the grain. But these men, they aren't expressing independent thought. They're simply conforming to a stereotype, and it's one that marginalizes and demeans them severely. I know that there's an acknowledgement in society that female sexuality is complex, to the point that it can be discussed in an academic setting. Now, male sexuality in an academic setting is seen only as destructive. And you read, scholars and academics, that they tend to explore male sexuality only in relation to very, very vague concepts. And you know what they are, concepts of aggression, or power, or perversion. I mean, gender bias is rife in universities. Now, for a male to give his opinion on male sexuality, he's immediately taking the role of the outcast. His masculinity will be questioned. And that's in a social setting. In an academic setting, you're a threat. I mean, we've all seen how males are treated on college campuses for being male. Now, imagine compounding that with a man who refuses to conform or debase himself. That man is in real danger. I mean, you see, and this is perpetrated through the media, women are given great freedom to do a number of different things sexually. And this is seen as female empowerment. It's encouraged, it's condoned. Men are restricted to just wanting to fuck something. I mean, there's a very rigid conformity that men must adhere to sexually, which, if you think about it, is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, everyone is different. How can there be a universal, singular form of sex that all men receive the same level of sexual enjoyment and fulfillment from? How is that possible? Now, and of course, anything outside of this is deemed perversion. And this is a message that males receive. I mean, it's generally accepted that women's sexuality, it's complex, it's mysterious, it's natural, it's loving, it's everything under the sun. With men, it's always seen as predatory or perverse. That is anything other than a very strictly defined concept of sex is seen as demeaning, or oppressive, or sick, or not masculine. That is, if it's initiated by the male. But the sad thing for men, society forces a version of sex on them that is just a very poor, limited version of what is really possible. I mean, everyone loses on this, men and women. And of course, men live in a world full of stereotypes, full of crazy pressures. They're immense. And the stereotype that we want to have sex with anything that's basically put in front of us is ridiculous. It's simply not the case. Attraction is complex. And the message that's coming through loud and clear today is that male sexuality is a problem, that it's destructive, that it's aggressive, and no other image is being put forth for men to align with. So you ask yourself, what is making love? And you know the joke, you've heard it before, what is making love? It's something a woman does when a man is fucking her. But what is love? I mean, for men, it's being close to a woman. It's trusting and sharing with a woman. Of course, with all the systematic bias against men, that trust needs to be immense. And even then, the man is at great risk. But regardless, men feel this closeness with women very, very intensely. And the perception, society sees men's emotional needs as primitive or completely non-existent. But men don't express emotions the way that women do. That doesn't mean our emotions are barren. We just speak a different language. And it's not a language that women have ever attempted to bridge, because it's always been on their terms, trying to communicate from their side, their end, never actually seeing it through the eyes of a man. And of course, to do so would actually mean accepting men as, valid human beings, that they actually feel and experience emotions on a very deep level. Of course, it would also mean in turn that men could no longer be viewed as disposable utilities. Shock horror. What would that mean? We know what it would mean. But I can assure you that, and this is from my own experience, that when men are given the space, when men are given the respect that they deserve, they will open up. And they do analyze their emotional inner life very deeply. Men are analytical by nature. But society refuses to accept this. But men are incredibly complex. But the thing is, you can only ever get an understanding of them from their perspective. And yes, you may not like their answers, but at least it will be the truth, as opposed to the usual, generic media propaganda. And I look at the media, and you always see women in the media giving their 2 cents on men and on male sexuality, dictating to them or criticizing them openly. You never see a man on any of those panels, other than perhaps just a pandering male reporter telling these women exactly what they want to hear. Women, it would seem, don't like the answers that men give, so women don't ask very often. But crossing into the issue of consent, women can push boundaries of consent just as much, if not more than men. And men have to like it. And if a man voices objections or claims it was non-consensual, immediately there's something wrong with him, not the woman. Ask yourself, have you as a man ever had sex with a woman when you haven't wanted to? Now, just to live up to society's pressure. Now, we've all done it. Women too. Women do it too. But the difference is that men don't get to claim non-consent. Because if they do, they're attacked. Their masculinity is questioned. Their sexuality is questioned. Even if they're a child. And it's frustrating because men love. Men cry, men are fully emotive human beings. And there's nothing shameful about that. And any worldview that falls short of that, really, quite honestly, is the emotional equivalent of castration. And masculinity, it's a role that men are forced to conform to, because society is threatened by male emotion. Now, men are raised from the day of their birth to separate and repress their emotions. Society is afraid of those emotions. Otherwise, it wouldn't work so hard to hide them. Now, if you think about it, every joke a woman makes about male sexuality, every jibe the media puts forward, is just an attempt to make men conform to a very simple model, so that man knows his place, and her needs and society's needs get precedence. They get put first every time. And I mean, I constantly hear women, they complain about men who won't open up, who won't express their feelings. But these same women really don't have any sexual desire for a man that opens up. This is female perception. So, I mean, but no matter how hard we try to deny it, no matter how hard we try to fight it, sex stimulates emotions. Of course, a real man doesn't have emotions, so as men, we're expected to deny what we feel. Plus, men won't discuss sex for fear of being seen as unattractive or too effeminate by the female. But I mean, really, honestly, realistically, relationships between the sexes are anemic enough as they are right now. Do we really need this shit? But you look at pressure put on men. It's not put on women. Not in this regard. There's huge pressure on men to perform sexually. But in reality, I mean, for a man to have a rewarding sexual experience, that woman needs to appeal to him on many levels. No, not just looks. She needs to have the right series of attributes, the right behaviours, the right outlooks to push his buttons. And men have a list as long as their arm, conscious and subconscious, of what they look for in a female. She can't just be a pair of tits on legs. But female sexuality, though, and especially female virginity, is given precedence. It's given high priority in our society. But the expectations on a male's first time, what's placed on him, is horrendous. The boys get no advice. They get zero education. All they get is pressure. All they get is just unrealistic expectations. And in turn, just complete outright condemnation. Especially when a girl gets pregnant. Of course, whether or not she tricked him or lied to him is largely irrelevant, it would seem. But boys, just like men, get shamed for not having sex. They get pressure from that end. And then in turn, condemnation for having sex. All the responsibility goes on their shoulders, which is completely wrong. So we fail boys in this regard, when we really should be protecting them. Anyway, that's just a few ideas from my end, but thank you for your time, and I'll be making a few more videos from this point forward. So I'll see you next time. Keep on trucking. Thank you.